So I wanted to do a video about Invincible. Invincible has been one of my favourite comics for as long as I can remember. Robert Kirkman, the creator and writer of the book, has just announced that it is going to end. What is Invincible? Invincible is Robert Kirkman's superhero book. It started around the same time as The Walking Dead, and for a while they were both running along really well, very popular, good sales. A lot of Robert Kirkman's books I felt took a back seat to The Walking Dead. I'm the biggest Walking Dead fan ever, not the TV show, the comic book series, but I was always a little bit disappointed because Invincible was constantly being delayed. There was some sloppy story arcs that I didn't really think were that great, and there wasn't much time and thought put into them. But it's still a great book, and there are some great moments in it as well. So one of the things I love about Robert Kirkman as a writer is he always pulls out some great shocks, some moments where you really are, sort of jaw-dropping moments that you look forward to. For me, it's those moments that make the books unmissable. You don't get them moments very often in things like Spider-Man and Superman and the Avengers. Those things just regurgitate themselves. But with Invincible it was different because Robert Kirkman always said that what he wanted with this book is for it to be a story that will go on forever. We will slowly see the evolution of the character, Mark Grayson. Without going into too much detail and giving away too many spoilers, this is the first volume. It's called Family Matters. And the book starts out as a pretty standard, stereotypical superhero book. And it's a young boy who's trying to find his identity. He's trying to deal with these newfound powers. There's a bit of a whodunit murder mystery story going on there, which gets you sort of interested in the book initially. And there's some fun characters here that you sort of learning about without knowing too much about their background. In the second book, the second volume, everything that you thought this book was going to be is just ruined and destroyed. And the book really takes off from there because it's such a huge U-turn, such a big twist in the story that you want to know why and you want to find out more. And I think the book is at its very strongest in those early days. So one thing that Invincible really struggles with is cast. Now don't get me wrong, there's some amazing characters in this book, some really lovable characters. People like Cecil Stedman, Angstrom Levy, the Mauler twins, Battle Beast, who is a really unique and exciting character. Some of the earlier characters are really good, but I think it really struggles later on to reproduce characters that aren't just imitation as well. I felt like this was a problem also with Robert Kirkman's other superhero book, Wolfman. There just wasn't a good enough cast to back up the main hero. One of the things that I found difficult when I was writing my superhero comic was it was very easy to write a superhero, to give them an origin and a set of powers, but what was really challenging was finding a cast of villains for them to fight, and those villains to be cool and interesting. Some of the villains were just like, I just didn't take them seriously at all, and I think he tried his hardest to give a story to some of them, but it just didn't work. So that's my main criticism. One of the things that Robert Kirkman always said was that Invincible is not your average superhero book. So they'll head in a certain direction where you think you know what's going to happen, and then they completely spin it on its head. And there's a couple of times where that has happened and it works really well. There's also a couple of times where it doesn't work so well. It's really obvious and you end up just questioning it because the book sort of zigzags. A lot of the characters' morals, and you have to question some of their decisions. It's almost as if Robert Kirkman wanted to spin things on its head, but didn't really think about it in terms of that character's development and the history of that character. Some of the decisions could be completely against what they think, and it's very up and down at times. And again, I'm not criticising, I'm just saying as a reader, these are the things that I picked up on. So as I've said, the book has some really great moments, some fantastic action. It's gory. It's very similar to The Walking Dead in terms of there'll be a cliffhanger or a big death or a situation where characters are completely wiped out, and that keeps me on the edge, that keeps me wanting more. So I genuinely think his decision to end this book was in the back of his head quite some time ago, because some of the recent arcs have been a bit odd, to say the least. They've been a little bit forced and a little bit premature, like you sort of could happily have seen them happening 4 or 5 years down the line, but right now I just feel like they've just come a little bit too soon. Like he's tried to jam in all these big stories before ending the series, over his initial plan for these stories to take place naturally and the book to go on forever, and he pass it on to another creative team. Thinking about that, you know, it goes back again to the cast. The supporting cast just isn't good enough for Invincible for it to be a book that goes on forever. You can't just keep rehashing the popular villains. There aren't enough of them. This isn't Batman, this isn't Spider-Man. One thing that really proves my point is at several times during the Invincible's lifespan, they've tried to launch an Avengers type team called the Guardians of the Globe. Eventually they called it the Invincible Universe, because they thought that by attributing it to Invincible it would boost sales. And I gave it a couple of chances and then just dropped the series, and eventually it was cancelled. So I don't think I was the only one that felt that way. And I think as a creator and an owner and a businessman, Robert Kirkman has probably tested the water a little bit and found those, you know, he's learnt from his mistakes there. You know, I'm not having a pop at him. I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that for me, the cast was never strong enough for it to support the Invincible book full time, let alone for it to launch its own, you know, ongoing series. But it does show how popular Invincible got. For it to be popular enough for it to launch its own book, it's set on the power team Guardians of the Globe. I think that shows that there was promise. So for me, some of my favourite moments of the book have been the Angstrom Levy character, who continued to keep returning and was really very quite unique and interesting character. The Conquest battle, Conquest was a soldier, sort of warrior from the race that Mark Grayson's dad belongs to, the Viltrumites. And he was much stronger and powerful, more powerful than anyone Mark had ever faced, and you really didn't know how he was going to beat him. Like it really worked quite well. The issues were very tense, and it was almost a little bit like the old Dragon Ball Z episodes that were 3 or 4 episodes of just a huge battle, and it's just the hero getting knocked back again and again and again, and you're really thinking, how is he going to do this? And you know, I really loved that. Really loved the Conquest character. The Invincible book has gone so far and made huge efforts to be so different from Spider-Man and Batman and Superman that it is now irreversible if you did want to bring it back to what it essentially is, a superhero book. So I think some of the things that worked earlier on have now perished because of the storylines and the things the characters have been through, which is great. I like that. It's different. It's the reason I read Invincible. It sort of makes me feel like Invincible was a bit of an experiment. Towards the end, I think he was experimenting with what he could get away with and what he could trick readers. How can we really fool and troll the readers? So it's completely like they're sent down the river and then it's a complete U-bend. They think they're going down on one journey and we send them on a complete other journey. And I appreciate that. And I'm ranting a little bit like it's a criticism. It's not. I'm just saying that's how it made me feel. How do I feel about it ending? Well, for me, the book lost the spark that kept me interested and eager for the next issue. I think that a lot of the problems with that was down to the delays. Towards the end, issues have been sort of 3 or 4 months apart at times, and I think that really killed any momentum that the book had. So I do think it suffered because of that, but I am sad to see it go because it's still up there as one of my, most eagerly anticipated comics of the month. So overall, I'm really disappointed that Invincible is dying. You've heard all of the things that I like about it and all the things I don't like about it. It's a solid book, and I definitely recommend reading it. The arcs sort of at the beginning, leading up, showing the development of Mark Grayson and some of the heavy action stuff that comes, and the huge storylines, and the universal span of some of the storylines is great. So it's definitely worth checking out, and I would really recommend that you pick it up. You can start with volume 1 here. I think it's about £8 on Amazon or eBay. My suggestion would be to get this and the second volume, just to give yourself a go at it, and if you like it from there, stick with it because it's a great book.